Speaker for the day, Ketan Bajani, Chairman Directors Committee, Rahul Akani, Convener of the committee, Avinash Ladwani, Vice President, Past President of the Association, Ajit Rohila, Vipin Bhai, Madam Ashok Sharma, colleague in the Managing Council, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to greet you at this lecture meeting on the revised reporting under tax audit. The tax audit was introduced by the Finance Minister in 84-85. When he was introducing the tax audit, the words what he said was, with the reduction in tax, the expeditious disposal of the assessment, I believe there can be no excuse for any leniency to be shown to those who abuse our laws. Such cases necessarily have to be dealt with severely. In order to discourage tax avoidance and tax evasion, I am also introducing some further measures. In all such cases, where turnover exceeds 20 lakhs rupees for the business and gross receipts from the profession exceeds 10 lakhs, I am providing compulsory audit of the accounts. This is intended to ensure that books of accounts and other records are properly maintained and faithfully reflect the true income of the taxpayer. Since the introduction of tax audit in the 84, tax audit form have undergone changes regularly. Last such change was there in the July 2014. Lecture meeting is organized to understand implications of such change. The new form, various line items have been added, few have been modified, and couple of them have deleted. New form puts various duties on the taxpayer as well as the auditor. We need to disclose whether assessor is liable to pay taxes under various laws, whether they are registered or not. So, as a tax auditor, we need to certify that these are the persons are liable to under other laws. Whether transfer of land or building, the value has been specified is whether less than the stamp duty value or not.
So we are requesting you to please go inside. Please. Go behind that page.
The receipt of share application money or shares have been allotted, whether it is fair market value or not. TDS returns have been filed or not. Whether the interest computation has been made or not. So many such things. The requirement of the tax audit report is not only
That is now another way for sorry.
Just minimize it.
the reporting requirement in the tax audit is not only the computation of business income, but it goes to other heads of income also. So Finance Minister, when he was new Finance Minister, Arun Jaitley, when he was introducing the budget this time, he said that retrospective amendments is the right of the government, but this government refrains from having any retrospective amendments. Whether this changes is retrospective or not. Yesterday, CBDT has further issued a clarification on the tax audit report, but way the circular being drafted, half-hearted. Whether the extension is for filing the report or for return. That's a $1 million question of whether drafting has been done. No doubt, Chamber will be representing on the same point. To understand all these intricacies, we have this lecture meeting. Considering the many persons are not the members of Chamber, I would like to say a few words about the Chamber. Chamber of Tax Consultants is a nearly 9-decade-old organization. Its strength is more than 3,500 members. In the case of the Chamber is that members are chartered accountants, and also the corporate members. It functions through various committees. One such committee is the Direct Tax Committee, who will organize this program. Chamber regularly publishes monthly journal called Chamber's Journal, and these have been found placed in the library of every member. This year, Chamber also started one more activity as a student committee, and the focus of this committee is doing the programs for students. For socializing also, Chamber does various activities like sports event. Recently it had an activity of the football match. With these few words, I once again welcome you to this lecture meeting, and I hand over proceedings to the chairman, Ketan Vajani, to take the proceedings further. Thank you. President Paraswai, Speaker for the day, Amit Bhai, seniors, past presidents of the chamber, my colleagues in the managing council, seniors and friends. I welcome you all to this lecture meeting on the revised tax audit forms. While I welcome you, I also need to apologize to many of you that we could not accommodate you in the best possible manner. It is the topic which has attracted so many of you over here. Everybody is concerned. Various issues are there which are emerging from this new tax audit, which the President has discussed, and Amit Bhai will discuss in greater detail. So I would not like to discuss those issues, but I would pleasantly introduce our faculty for the day, Sri Amit Patel. Mr. Amit Patel is a chartered accountant since 1986. He has a good, very great academic career. He has passed both inter and final CA examination with a rank. He had his articleship with a very renowned firm, S.V. Gatalia and Associates, and currently he is a partner of Sudhit K. Parekh and Company and heads the BFSI tax practice and SKP at SKP, where he deals with extensively with tax matters of FIIs, banks, mutual funds, and also qualified financial institutions. His core area of practice is tax planning, appeals, and representations, and also information technology related issues. His focus is basically on tax related issues pertaining to financial service sector and NRIs. He had a great association with the Bombay Chartered Accountants Society. He was a member of the managing council of the Bombay Chartered Accountants Society from 1998 to 2010, and he was the president of the BCA Society in the year 2009-10. Currently, he is the chairman of the 4I committee of the BCA Society and also a member of Taxation Committee and General Committee of the Society. He is also a member of the Finance and Taxation Panel of the CII's Western Region and also of the Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He has also been a member of the Information Technology Committee of the IMC and the Chamber of Tax Consultants also, and currently he is a member of the Corporate Members Committee of the Chamber of Tax Consultants. He has been part of the Technical Committee of WIRC for Regional Conference and also a member of the expert group constituted by the WIRC to suggest changes in the syllabus for IT-related papers for the CA curriculum. He has led several income tax study circles and also delivered talk in various forums. He is a co-author of few books, Calculators to Computers, Analysis, Shares and Securities, Taxation and Accounting, Tax Deduction and Shows, FAQs on ETDS, etc. He writes regularly for newspapers like Money Look, Money Outlook, Money Life, CNBC's moneycontrol.com, and monthly journals of several mutual funds and also Dignity Foundation. And he occasionally also writes his papers in the BCA journal, which we are all also fond of. He has also appeared on several programs on the national television, sharing his views, and are regularly quoted in newspaper and websites, and is very active on various social media like Facebook and other such social medias. A very eminent personality, a very learned person to deal with the topic of this tax audit. With this, I welcome Amit Bhai for our lecture meeting, and I request you all to before I request Amit Bhai to give his talk, I would request Paras Bhai to offer a memento as a mark of our love and respect towards Amit Bhai. I would request Amit Bhai to please address.
President, Chairman, Convener, past and future presidents of the chamber, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first time I have people sitting behind me and listening to me. I am extremely nervous, and generally because of this, the people in front can't see that I am shivering, but here the secret is leaked out from behind me. It is extremely awesome to see such a large crowd here. And as Ketan rightly mentioned, it is because of the topic that all of us are here. And
always you have this practice.
sorry.
Each time you have this full hall, next time CCA.
Anyway, thank you very much for this large attendance. All of us, as he rightly mentioned, are concerned at the changes that have been brought about in the tax audit forms. And let us try to look at some of them. We have little time. 30th September is fast approaching, so let's look at what is happening. But I spent a lot of time in preparing on the subject itself, and then last night, as we all know, the notification was issued. And therefore, a lot of time today will have to be spent on the notification itself, because there is a big question mark as to how to apply that notification. So 20th August 2014, the CBDT has issued a notification exercising the powers vested in the CBDT under section 119. And the notification unfortunately has been worded in a manner that half the community of chartered accountants want and feel that the due date for return of income has also been extended from 30th September to 30th November. And the other half of the chartered accountants, although they want it, are of the opinion that the due date for return of income is not extended. So my personal view is that the notification refers only to section 44AB, and therefore I don't think that the due date for the filing of return of income has been extended. If the CBDT, I mean, had they worded it properly, it should have referred to section 139 instead of section 44AB, because if they had notified it with reference to 139, then automatically 44AB would have been extended. So that should have been the case, and that is brought out by the earlier notification in the past. So I just tried to find a past notification. In 2009, when there was some problem in Pune, Sangli and Kolhapur, they had issued this notification dated 25th September 2009, where the objective was same, to extend the due date, but the way it was worded was that so and so this thing hereby extends the due date of obtaining tax audit reports under 44AB of the IT Act, as well as for filing of return of income required to be furnished by 30th September. So it was very clearly drafted in the past. This year, despite the fact that we are supposed to be having, Achhe Din Wali Sarkar, we are having this kind of an ambiguity. So I just thought I'll bring out this notification. Those of you who, are courageous enough to take a stand that the return of income due date has also been extended, need to be just aware of the difference in the wordings of the current notification and the past notification. The tax audit forms have caused a lot of concern, and the impact you can see very well. So therefore, because of the notification, there is a confusion, but yet according to me, the due date of filing the return is not extended, and that being the case, I feel that going ahead with this lecture meeting is justified. So let's look at the history of 3CD. It was introduced for the first time in April 85, with effect from 1st April 1985. Prior to the latest amendment, there were 34 clauses. The numbering starts from 1 to 32, but in the middle there are 2 clauses with capital A. So there are 34 clauses and 2 annexures. After the amendment, there are 41 clauses and no annexures. Both the annexures have been done away with. In 84, when it was introduced through the Finance Act 84, the explanatory notes on the Finance Act 1984 talked about the reason, the justification for bringing about the tax audit section in the Act. And one thing that they mentioned, which is highlighted in red, is that it can also facilitate the administration of tax laws by a proper presentation of the accounts before the tax authorities. And what is relevant is this, and considerably saving the time of assessing officers in carrying out routine verifications like checking correctness of totals and verifying whether purchases and sales are properly vouched or not. So this inter alia was the objective behind bringing about the 4480 section into the Income Tax Act. The question that have always plagued our minds ever since 1984 is that do the assessing officers actually place reliance on the information that we certify every year from time to time in the form 3CA, Bs and 3CD? If not, what is the point in making the reporting requirements larger and greater? Does the report as it stands today after the amendment consist only of routine information? Because that was the objective of bringing 3CD, that the routine part of the assessing officer's duties can be shifted to the chartered accountants. So these are the questions that the department needs to ponder over before bringing about more and more changes in the 3CD. However, that is notwithstanding that, I would feel that as a profession, we need to take this as an opportunity instead of as a threat. The important issues arising out of the amendments, first of all, on 25th July 2014, the notification was issued amending the forms. Several tax audits have already been completed since before that, and only uploading was pending. The new format also applies to earlier years if the audit is not yet completed or return is not yet filed. Of course, this part of the thing changes in light of yesterday's notification, but we have to figure out in the schema that was announced, made available last night, what is the position about the earlier years. We don't know. We'll have, as in the next few days, we will come to know what happens. In case of bank audits particularly, those of us who are doing bank audits would know the problems related to the branch audits. The auditors are different. How are we supposed to go back to the branch auditor and get all the tax audits redone, etc.? Who is going to pay for all the travel again required to go to the different places? And
maybe the fee also.
yeah. Interestingly, if you go to incometaxindia.gov.in and you try to download the form 3CD, it still has the old 3CD. No. I'm talking of incometaxindia.gov.in, not the e-filing site. The e-filing schema was uploaded yesterday, but on the IT, the normal income tax site, the old format still remains. So the department itself, although it issued a notification on 25th July, is not prepared even as of today as we speak. And that being the case, the question that we as chartered accountants must ask the government is that how do you expect the chartered accountants to cope with these changes in such a short period of time? Just one issue about, before we get into the details of 3CA and 3CD, the issue of about the extension of due date. As it stands today, as I said earlier, my view is that the due date for filing returns is not extended. So we have a situation where the return has got to be filed by 30th September. The return, in the return ITR form, there is a field for mentioning whether you are subjected to 44AB audit If yes, at least last year we had the field for putting in the date of signing the report as well as the date of uploading the report on the site. And that being the case, and in any case, if we have to file the return, how do we file unless the tax audit is completed? So we have a situation where the due date is extended, but if the due date for return is not extended, then and if we have to comply with the provision, we will still need to complete the tax audit, although we may not sign off. And then again after 30th September, before 30th November, once the tax audit is finalized, maybe if there are changes in the final tax audit report, we might have to go in for a revised return. Hopefully the department will issue a notification. Obviously institute and other bodies like chamber would be making representations to get this clarity about the return of income due date. But if that does not happen, then we are in for trouble, because this kind of a situation will be there where you have an unsigned 3CD and you are forced to file a return of income. Coming to the actual changes in Form 3CA, where there is a reference to the profit and loss account, the words for the period beginning from so and so date to ending on so and so date, the ones in red have been added in the new format, instead of the earlier position where it was profit and loss account or income and expenditure account for the year ended on so and so date. So we have, under the Income Tax Act, the previous year mandatorily as April to March, and now in the 3CD, in the 3CA, we have to refer to the profit and loss account for a period from X date to Y date. I was just thinking what could be the logic. So one possibility is that maybe we are going back to the old age where, and some of you may not even have been born at that time, but once upon a time, we did not have to mandatorily maintain the accounts on for the purposes of tax from April to March, but you could have had any kind of previous year. So many people had October to September, some people had Samvat year, some people had July to June, etc. So are we looking at days ahead when the option will be given to the taxpayer to change the previous year? I don't know. But more importantly, this will affect newly set up businesses. So when a new company, for example, comes into existence, the return of income has to be prepared for the period from date of setup of the business up to 31st March. And there have been lots and lots of litigative cases on the issue of what constitutes date of setup. So as up till now, as a tax auditor, the responsibility of signing up on the date of setup was not there on us, because we just had to write profit and loss account for the year ended on so and so date. So there was no dispute about when the year is ending. But when is the year starting, there is a question mark. So we'll have to be extremely careful in case of new SSEs where the business is set up during the financial year 2013-14, and be very clear about the date of setup. If there is a stand being taken, on any particular matter, which could result in the assessing officer having a different opinion as far as the date of setup is concerned, I think we need to clearly bring it out in the notes that we upload on the site. Of course, in the electronic environment, there's no place to put up the notes. So that was the case that we faced last year. We'll have to figure out. We would have already figured out how to upload our note, qualification, disclaimers, etc. In that same place, probably we'll have to also now mention about the date of setup. Then the words according to examination of books of account, including other relevant documents, has been added. So therefore, the qualifications and observations will have to be mentioned in the Form 3CA itself. And I think this is actually would help us, because as we are aware, there is no other place for putting in any notes, any qualifications, any disclaimers, etc. So probably based on last year's representation as to where do we put these things, they have now come out with the amendment to the format itself, whereby you are forced to put all these qualifications and observations in the main body, in the body of the main audit report instead of anywhere else. A small change: in the past, the stamp of the auditor, earlier only signature was required. Now the stamp of the auditor is also required to be affixed. We were already doing it, but now it has been made it has been given a stamp of approval. In the notes to the form, the definition of signing authority has been removed. So earlier, if you saw the 3CD as printed, in the notes it was written this has to be signed by an accountant, and the accountant was defined over there. So that is removed, and instead a reference is made to the Income Tax Act. So account has to be signed by a person as referred to in the Income Tax Act. These are small changes, but just I thought of bringing them out. Then in the form 3CB, balance sheet, again cosmetic change. I don't know why they do this, but balance sheet as on instead of as at. I'm unable to understand the implication, if any, of this. Profit and loss account, again like the 3CA, it is for the period from so and so day to so and so day. Qualification observations, again like 3CA, you have to mention in the on the face of the report itself, and so on. So everything else, whatever applied to 3CA also applies to 3CB. Coming to changes in 3CB, lot of clauses have remained same, but the numbering may have undergone a change. So name of the SSE, address, PAN, status, assessment year, partnership firm related information, general information, business related general information, whether books of accounts are prescribed, and if yes, the list of books of accounts, the list of books of account examined, the method of accounting employed, change in method of accounting, details of deviation from the accounting standards prescribed under the Income Tax Act, method of valuation of closing stock, details of capital asset converted into stock in trade, amounts not credited to P&L account, items falling within scope of section 28, amount not credited to P&L, like pro forma credits, duty drawbacks, etc., escalation claims, any other income, capital receipts, all these clauses continue as they are without changes. Depreciation schedule, most of the clauses remain same. 36(1)(2), the bonus and commission paid to employees. 48(2)(b), profit chargeable under section 41. 43(b) related disclosures, details of amount borrowed on Hundi. 269 SS and T, most of it remains same. I will come to the major change that is brought about. Ratios also remain the same. But let's come to the actual changes now. In clause number, and all the clauses mentioned here are the new clause numbers. The presentation will be put up on the Chamber's website, I guess tonight or tomorrow. So it will be available for your download if you want. In clause number 4, the tax auditor has to report the registration number in case of indirect tax liability. So it is mentioned that where the SSE is liable to pay indirect tax, and pay importance to the word like. So it is liable to pay indirect tax like excise duty, service tax, sales tax, customs duty, etc. If yes, please furnish the registration number or any other ID number allotted for the same. So the tax auditor will maybe dealing only with direct tax matters of the client, will now have to go into the details of the indirect tax, everything, assessments, the registrations, etc. Find out first of all how many indirect taxes are applicable to that SSE, and then report the registration number. So just a thought that I had, liable to pay tax. So where the SS is liable to pay tax, what does it mean? Are they trying to, is there reference to a liability accruing, liability outstanding as on a particular date? If yes, on which date? As on 31st March or at any given point of time during the year? Or is it just not referring to an outstanding liability but to the coverage of indirect tax? I would feel obviously that it refers to the coverage of indirect tax. So if the SSE is collecting service tax or VAT or excise, etc., then the reporting requirements would apply. One question is that what if registration is taken but still I am not liable? So just for the sake of, in the past I had taken a registration but I have got out of the coverage of that particular law. Am I still liable? Is the tax auditor required to report that registration number? I think these are all academic questions. We will have to find the solutions to it. I would take a stand that if the number is there is no harm in giving the registration number. The next question is location-wise detail to be given or centralized? I would feel